Welcome back, APUSH students. Today is Chapter 12 of the American Pageant, titled The Second War for Independence and the Upsurge in Nationalism. If you don't know the American Pageant, it's fine because the content is still going to be the same. I'm going to go over all the key terms and notes for this chapter that helped me get a 5, so I encourage you to take notes along as well. Starting off the War of 1812, war between Britain and the United States. The American victory of the war in 1812 improved American morale and held the Union together. The reason why there's quotes is because in reality, it was really just a standoff. No one really won. But America won a moral victory, so we can say that the United States won. Battle of New Orleans, battle where the U.S. crushed the British. The decisive victory made the fighting Americans heroes and vastly increased nationalism and honor in their republics. Basically, the whole theme of this war is that this just increased American pride and morale as a whole. Treaty of Ghent, armistice between Britain and the U.S. to end the War of 1812. The simple terms in the treaty showed how the war was just a draw and didn't accomplish really anything regarding to grievances, although the Americans' attempt to spin the treaty increased nationalism. Hartford Convention, secret meeting of New England states. The meeting was actually fairly moderate, but it showed how the New England states were politically different than the rest of the country and they felt threatened by that. Its failure to make any change resulted in the death of the Federalist Party. So basically the Federalist factions in the Northeast wanted to actually kind of secede from the Union almost, and this was just terrible for the Federalist Party when this news got out and the Federalist Party collapsed. The Rush-Bagot Agreement, treaty limiting military power on the Great Lakes. It created better relations between Great Britain, American Indians, and the Americans that got rid of border conflicts. Tariff of 1816, tax on British imports to America. The taxes protected domestic manufacturers and developed an idea that the government would prioritize protecting domestic industry. So remember that tariffs on imported goods make foreign goods prices higher, which make more people buy American-made goods, so they support American businesses. American system, the idea that all regions would connect through banking, tariffs, and transportation. This idea united all regions of the United States, which helped to combat sectionalism and make each region sufficient domestically. The ideas of transportation helped to spread the country westward. So they wanted an interconnected United States through the American system. Henry Clay, congressman who proposed the American system. His proposal of the American system was met by a lot of support from the people. His plans responded to the main topics that sparked a sense of nationalism with the people, especially the transportation one, because westward expansion was a huge bringer of nationalism and pride among the people. Era of Good Feelings, period after the War of 1812. The Era of Good Feelings was about the emergence of American nationalism and pride, but also the start of the 19th century issues like sectional conflict and disputes over slavery. So although there was a lot of good feelings in this period, it was kind of the bridge between a lot of the bad things that happened in the 19th century that led to the Civil War. James Monroe, the 5th president who took over after James Madison. He was not a very qualified president, but he was good at capitalizing on American views to promote nationalism and make the populace happy. So he was very understanding of what the population wanted and did his best to get it done. Panic of 1819, an economic crash that brought about challenges. It caused a great deal of harm to the West, whose farms were being foreclosed upon by the National Bank. Poor families were hard hit, and the sense of nationalism started, and the Era of Good Feelings started to dwindle. So like most economic crashes, it affected the poor the most. Land Act of 1820 made new land out west cheaper. It allowed for more western expansion in combination with the growing transportation system. Another policy that really capitalized on westward fervor among the American people. Buy land cheaper, more people go, expands the United States. Simple as that. Talmadge Agreement, passed by the House against Missouri. It stopped the expansion of slavery into the area and made it so children of slaves would be emancipated. It also made expansionists mad who saw it as limiting the ability of Missouri to become a state, so the North could keep their advantages in the bodies of government. Peculiar institution, a euphemism for slavery. It was a term used by Southerners, and their use of this euphemism revealed that some of them actually knew the moral challenges of upholding slavery. So upholding slavery was becoming more of a challenge as the world modernized, and this was just one sign of that. Missouri Compromise between North and South over slave and free states. It balanced out the sectional battle in the Senate and set a precedent for the abolishment of slavery in the remaining area in the Louisiana Purchase, therefore preserving the balance for the future. So this established the compromise line, which you should know how slave states can only be below the line and free states will be above the line, all that. Old Northwest land opened up after the War of 1812, allowed poor white farmers who were being intruded upon by plantations to start a new life in a new land where they could set their own standards of land equality. It also brought about new economic opportunity for people failing to make it in the industrial Northeast. So this idea is really built upon as we go throughout the 19th century, how the West was a symbol for people who needed a fresh start and a symbol of opportunity for the population. McCulloch versus Maryland, I don't know why there's no definition. Whoops. It denied the ability for the states to tax the national bank and established the constitutionality of the bank, giving the federal government more authority. So it basically allowed the national bank to uphold itself. Established the precedent for loose constructionism, that anything within the spirit of the Constitution was considered constitutional. So anything that would be constitutional if it was written in the Constitution, that type of thing, where it was interpreted as constitutional, that was allowed. It's not just strictly what is literally written in the Constitution is what is legal. Cohen's versus Virginia established the ability for the Supreme Court to review cases that are brought to state courts. Essentially, the federal courts were to decide on the powers of the federal government, not the state courts. So the federal courts were the ones that had power of judicial review to decide what is constitutional, not the state courts. Gibbons versus Ogden declared that only Congress had the ability to make rules on interstate commerce, further encroaching on the rights of the states and upholding the Hamiltonian idea that it was the role of the federal government to control commerce. So this is just more of the central government taking away powers from the state. Not really taking away, but establishing what the central government has instead of the states. Fletcher versus Peck. The Supreme Court responded to the Georgia government, which was nullifying a rightful contract to land, establishing that the Supreme Court can invalidate state laws that conflict with the Constitution, specifically property rights. So the Supreme Court and the central government and what their laws are always trump what state laws do. Dartmouth College versus Woodward. Similar to Fletcher versus Peck, the government said that New Hampshire cannot nullify a rightful charter, which is just a contract, but it had the side effect of creating a quasi-invincibility of chartered businesses against the government acts, which that's not really the important part. The important part is the Supreme Court trumping state laws. Anglo-American Convention, agreement between Britain and America. It helped settle land disputes and conflict over fishing territory. It eased relations with Britain as it made further compromises. Adams-Onis Treaty, agreement between Spain and America. It gave America Florida and enabled Andrew Jackson to uphold his oppression of the American Indians and Spanish leaders. So the more control the Americans had over the southern land, the more they were able to control it, and that included mistreatment of the American Indians. Monroe Doctrine, nationalistic announcement by America. It established a nationalistic precedent that the New World would be for republicanism and not the impressment by old world monarchies. So basically what the Monroe Doctrine stated was that America was in control of the Western Hemisphere and it would not fall into any sort of influence or control by the old world and the European powers. This didn't really establish anything in terms of like laws or like actual policies, but it was purely a symbol for American power. And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next chapter, and goodbye.